Kia ora koutou, it's Nick Kiddey here at Riverton Environment Centre. Today I'm going to have a look at our worm farm. We've got set up in an old bathtub here, the worm farm, and we started out by putting a layer of gravel in the bottom of it to help it drain, and we put a little cover over the plug so that any liquid can drain out of the plug hole. It's really important that you do that because you don't want water to build up inside the worm farm because that can drown the worms. I'm going to open it up and we're going to have a look at what the different sides look like, and I'll explain a little bit about them. We've got this excellent lid that lifts up on either side, allowing access. On this side is the side that we're feeding at the moment. You can see it's got food scraps and things in there. On this side, it's where we have fed in the past, but we've stopped so that we can collect out this lovely vermicast that's built up in there. You can clearly see the difference between these two sides. The side that we're actively feeding and the side that we haven't fed for some months. The reason we've done that is that the worms are going to move over to where the food is, so that as we empty this side out, we shouldn't be getting too many worms. Whereas on this side underneath will be thick with worms at the moment, and we don't really want to disturb them. We'll have a closer look at those in a minute. In order to empty this side out, I've left the lid off for most of the day so that the bright sunlight will deter the worms from coming to the surface. And I'm hoping that as we scrape off the top layer, we won't be getting too many worms turning up. As we start getting deeper, we might find some more worms, and then I'll stop, and because of the bright light, those worms should move further down so that we're not going to disturb them. I know that there's plenty of worms in here, so even if we do end up taking some worms out this side, it doesn't matter too much. We have our bath worm farm set up out the back of our environment centre. We have an organic food shop in there and quite a lot of produce, old lettuce leaves and whatnot needs to be disposed of. So the worm farm's in the perfect place. It makes it nice and easy to bring stuff out. We have a bucket inside, clearly labelled, worms and what can go in there, paper towels, tea bags, coffee, fruit and veggie scraps. We keep a sheet of cardboard over the top of the worm farm. It helps to keep moisture inside, keeps it nice and dark for the worms as well, and also prevents any odours coming out that might otherwise come out. Looking at the surface here, I can clearly see pumpkin, radish tops, paper towels, silver beet leaves, apples, various other bits and pieces. Now I'm going to get my shovel and I'm going to have a little bit of a dig in here, and we'll see if we can't see some good worm action. I've just scraped the surface of this, and already it's crawling with worms. There's hundreds of worms here, right in this surface layer. Everywhere I dig in here, it is full of worms. Now these are the worms that are known as tiger worms. They have a stripy body when they stretch themselves out, and they're quite distinctive. Voracious eaters of organic material. So they are going to crank through this stuff in here in no time at all. I think we'll get ourselves a little bit of a close-up of that. you can see this is a very healthy worm farm over here. We had some problems with it a while ago with there being too much water in there and a lot of the worms drowned, but we managed to unblock the plug hole, let the liquid out, and now they're doing really, really well. So I'm just going to go over and I'm going to show you the other side as we empty it out. So I've got my table here set up so that as I empty out the material from the worm farm, I can spread it out on top of this pile here, and then I'm going to scrape off the top into the buckets so that those worms can go down deeper inside. Interesting to see what's in here actually. Now this is the lid of a takeaway coffee cup. This is BioWare and it's made of PLA plastic, which is compostable, but only under commercial composting conditions, which means plenty of heat and plenty of moisture. Now this has got plenty of moisture in it, but not enough heat to break the stuff down. So this looks exactly like it did when it first went in there. This is a cellophane bag. So this is made of plant material and it will biodegrade, but it hasn't been in there long enough. But you can see how easily it breaks up. So that's made of cellulose. This is a wrapper from the chocolate bar, and this is home compostable plastic. So unlike this plastic, which needs heat, this stuff doesn't need heat to break it down. It's already falling to pieces. And there's a piece here which is clearly biodegrading. We'll have a close-up look at that in a minute. This is the inside of a takeaway coffee cup. The paper in the cup is disintegrated and composted, but this is the plastic liner that's left. That's not going to break down any further. It might be compostable PLA plastic, in which case it would need heat to break down as well. But it could also just be plain old non-biodegradable plastic. In here also you can see avocado shell, bits of turmeric, an old bit of kumara. Now these things are breaking down, but they're pretty slow. So I'm going to chuck those back onto the other side and let them have another round of composting. As I do this, I'm just carefully scraping it off the top. Now this is just the top sort of 5 centimetres in here, and already you can see there's lots of worms. So as I go through this, I'm going to pull out any plastics, some kind of plastic bag, anything that needs to go back in for more composting, sellotape, turmeric, and when I come across a big clump of worms like this, I'm going to chuck them back on the other side as well. Now it doesn't matter if these worms go in the bucket with the vermicast, that's fine, because when it gets used, spread around some plants in a garden, those worms are just going to burrow into the soil anyway. This is really nice, excellent quality vermicast. It's dark, it's crumbly, it's soft. It doesn't stink of anything, it just has a gentle sort of earthy smell to it. This is finished vermicast, ready to be used in the garden. The avocado stone that's sprouting, well, I'm just going to chuck that back on the other side. I'll probably end up pulling that out again next time I go through this worm farm. There's some walnut shells, they're going to take ages, they can just go back in. Some more turmeric. reason I'm emptying this out today is that the other side, as you saw before, is getting pretty full. So we want to start to use this side to put those food scraps in. So I'm going to get as much of this vermicast as I can out so that this side is pretty empty. Then we're going to stop feeding the other side, and the worms will finish processing all of that material, and then they'll start moving across over here into the new stuff. So it means that we have this continuous system going where one side is breaking down nice and slowly and the other side is filling up. And ideally, by the time one side is full, the other side is ready to be emptied out, and you can just keep going on and on. So, rubber band in here somewhere. Oh. Little bit of tree roots in there. So you may sometimes find this as an avocado shell full of worms. It's like a little worm refuge in there. Pop that back over the other side. So I'm just going to carry on and empty this side out and then process that. I'll get back to you in a minute. So I've been gently scraping the surface of this material off and putting it into this bucket, and already I've got a full 9 litre bucket of really high quality vermicast there. While I've been going through, I've been finding a few bits and pieces. Now at the Environment Centre we rely heavily on volunteers helping out in our organic co-op, and so not everybody knows what's okay and what's not okay to go on the worm farm, and frankly it can be quite confusing to know as well, because especially now we're getting lots of packaging that's labelled compostable. So as I mentioned before about the coffee cup lids, there's 4 or 5 of those in here. Now they haven't changed a bit since they were first put in there, not at all. I found a rubber band and a chicken bone. That's biodegradable and that can go back in. It's just going to take a long time before it actually breaks down. Same with this eggshell. We don't have a lot of eggshells going in our worm farm, but there's a bit here. Now that's going to take ages to break down as well, but that's okay. Go back in. I've got here a Trade Aid instant coffee bag. This is labelled OK Compost Home. You can see it's breaking down already. So I'm quite encouraged by that. I'm going to put it back in, and next time I empty it out I'll see if that's still there. I've got a couple of these bags here that say, they've also got this label on it, OK Compost Home. So that means that that's certified to be able to be composted in a home compost. It means that you don't necessarily have to have high heat like you would in a commercial composting operation that you would need in order to break this stuff down. This stuff should break down okay, and you can see it's pretty soft, it's coming apart. So I'm going to put that back in as well, and we'll see if next time, see how well that's doing. There's some more compostable plastics. There's also a whole apple. It's interesting to see that that doesn't seem to have broken down at all. Just going to slice that open and see what it's like on the inside. So it's breaking down, but it's hardly changed at all. So I'm going to chuck that back in. It's a good point that the larger the material you put in, the longer it will take to break down. If this apple was chopped up into lots of little pieces when it was put in there, it probably would have been biodegraded by the worms by now, but it hasn't. It's gone in whole, so it hasn't really been that much touched at all. There's a nice big stone, not likely to break down in a hurry. Even worms probably couldn't get through a stone, I suspect. So I'm going to put that back on the ground. Now what I've been doing is gently scraping the surface of this off, and when I do that I'm not finding many worms in that top material. There's a few, but if you do it nice and slowly, most of the worms are burrowing down underneath. And what we'll probably find is as I get to the bottom of this pile there'll be a layer of worms sitting on the table. They really don't like the light, so they're burrowing away from it. I'm also wearing gloves, partly for hygiene reasons, but actually also because worms don't like to be handled by human skin. The oils on our skin irritate their bodies. And we don't want to irritate the worms, we want to keep on their good side because they're doing wonderful things for us. So we need to treat them like friends and look after them. Some more old turmeric, another avocado stone. You can tell this is good vermicast because you can't really recognise what it's originally made of. There's a bit of a pumpkin seed or a plum stone or something. Otherwise, it's actually pretty hard to identify anything individually in here. And you can see when I do this that there's quite a lot of worms hanging out at the bottom. If I make a wee pile of it, they're going to burrow down and I'll be able to keep clearing that off. A bit of kiwi fruit skin, some more avocado shell. The stuff here hasn't broken down quite as well as the other stuff. Cup lid. Looking at this, I can see I can actually recognise more material in here. Looks like straw. Now that could go back in for another round of composting, but it's actually going to be fine if that just goes straight on the garden as well. So I'm just going to let the worms burrow down to the bottom of these piles and just gradually keep skimming off the top. It's kind of a slow process, but I'm in no rush. I'm going to put this stuff in a different bucket so that I know that in these two buckets here I've got the really fine, very good quality finished vermicast, and in the other container I've got slightly rougher, still being broken down vermicast. And you can see here that I've got down quite low on these piles. I've managed to fill up a 9-litre bucket with this sort of slightly rougher vermicast, and I filled a couple of these buckets with this really nice quality stuff. Now what's left in here is probably going to be a big pile of worms, so I'm just going to show you what that looks like, because all of those worms from that big pile I had before have all burrowed down below. So there you can see that the worms have all concentrated in a wee pile at the bottom to get away from the light. So that makes it really, really easy to pop them back in there. If we wanted to at this stage, we could put them into another container that had some air holes punched in the top, and then they would be perfect to give to somebody else for them to start their own worm farm. That's easily enough to get a worm farm started in that little pile there. This pile here, you can see again, right at the bottom there, trying to escape from the light. Massive, thick pile of worms. I'll get a close-up on that. Now you can see that this side of the worm farm is empty now. It's got, in the bottom here is the layer of sort of gravel that we put on the bottom to help with the drainage. Over time that's starting to actually fill up with vermicast, so it's becoming less effective. At some point we'll probably scrape out all of that gravel and put some fresh stuff in. I would suggest at that stage that we put a layer of impervious material, such as, well, not impervious, but a material like weed matting that'll let liquid flow through but won't let all of the vermicast mix in with the gravel. I think that will help with the drainage. At the moment there's not a huge number of worms in this side, and so I'm going to chuck a pile that I've pulled out when I've been collecting the vermicast. I'm going to chuck those back in here just to get it started, and then we'll start to feed this side from now on. We'll leave the other side and the worms will gradually make their way through all of that, and then all going well, by the time this side is full we'll be ready to empty out the other side. And probably do another video at that point too, because it's interesting to see those changes over time. So thanks for watching our video on worm farming. I hope you found it informative and interesting. We're big fans of worm farming here at the Environment Centre. It's an excellent way to process the organic waste that comes out of our shop and turn it into a high quality, sellable material, but also a material that can be converted into growing really good quality food. Thank you for watching, and remember, subscribe to our channel, check out some of our other videos. It all supports the work that we do here at Riverton Environment Centre. Cheers.